I want to thank all of you for being here today. Under the conditions, it's especially nice of you to join us. I know you're busy, so let me get right into it. No group of Americans has done more for our country these last several years than the men and women who wear the uniform of our armed services. And yet, all too often, while they're fighting for us, we have not adequately stood by them. That must change. For example, many men and women in the Guard and the Reserve, when they're activated, take a substantial cut in pay. Many Americans don't realize this. More than half of them, in fact, on an average of more than $4,000 per year. And it's just not right. While they're fighting insurgents or terrorists, they have to worry about their families at home, making the mortgage payment, putting food on the table, paying for college, that kind of thing. We need to do a better job of standing by them. I've proposed something in the United States Senate that would eliminate the Patriot penalty for the vast majority of our servicemen and women. What it would do for anyone who's been activated for more than 6 months from the Guard or Reserve, it would make up to $3,000 per month in lost pay, so they could provide for their loved ones even while they're representing us fighting overseas. We passed this with bipartisan support in the United States Senate. It went over to the House of Representatives, where unfortunately it was gutted. Our proposal would have helped about 49,000 Guardsmen and Reservists meet their family obligations while they were also serving our country. When it got through with the House, it was down to only about 5,000, which is not nearly enough. We have to do better than that. I'm proud to say that Brad Ellsworth endorses our proposal and helped to fight to get it enacted in the House of Representatives. He'll bring the change that we need to Washington. I mean, it's a classic example of how Washington works. Our proposal to help these 49,000 brave Americans who are representing us would cost over 5 years about $295 million. You know, that's about what we spend each day in Iraq, and yet the people in the House of Representatives said we couldn't afford it. They voted for a $231 million bridge to nowhere, but then they proceeded to gut our effort to try and help our Guardsmen and Reservists support their families. That's just not right. That's an example of Washington values run amok, not American values that we need to stand for here at home. So I'm proud to be here today with Brad Ellsworth, who will do right by the men and women who wear the uniform of our country. He'll be for a defense posture in our country that's tough, but it's also smart. And that's what we need to protect our country. It all starts right here. And Brad, I'm proud to join with you in doing right by the men and women who wear the uniform of our country.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Senator Bayh for joining me today and talking about veterans' rights and veterans' benefits. We've had a lot of opportunities to talk about the things that we need to fix in this country, and certainly today's topic is right at the top. I'd also like to thank these brave Hoosiers for joining me today, and the Senator and I. I've got to say, and especially a World War II veteran who made today. And thank you for your service, and thank you all for your service to our country. And that's what this is about today, talking with other elected officials. But more importantly, talking to these gentlemen and ladies behind me who all served our country bravely, putting their lives on the line to protect us so that we could enjoy the freedoms that we now enjoy. And so in turn, when we're elected officials, we owe the veterans of this country everything we can do to pay them back for what they did for us, sometimes making the ultimate sacrifice. My father served in the U.S. Navy. My grandfather served in World War I, and my uncle was shot down over the Pacific in World War II. I appreciate what they did and what they sacrificed for our great country, as well as these. And when I decided to run for office, I was immediately contacted by veterans and veterans groups on how we could better serve and how they felt they were not being represented adequately. So I've laid out a Veterans Bill of Rights, including the Patriot penalty and what we want to do there in fixing this. The one thing, first and foremost, we are in a wartime situation. And so first and foremost, we have to supply our troops that are now in active duty with the equipment and things they need to get their job done in Iraq and Afghanistan and then get back home safely. We need to, when they do come home, provide and work with them to educate them so that they get back in the workforce and they can then provide for their families on their own through a better education system and the GI Bill of Rights. We need to work on the health care. It's probably the #1 complaint that I get from veterans is when they get home, the holes and the lapses in the health care. And locally, I can certainly tell you that our veterans are not happy with the Veterans Association, the health care, and the number of doctors and the inadequate health care they're receiving. I hear it every day. Not enough doctors, having to travel, not enough coverage. And they're very concerned about this, and we owe them better. And I think that's what's important. We talk a lot about supporting our troops and supporting our veterans. It's time to put our money where our mouth is, let the rubber meet the road, and do right by these folks behind me, as well as the folks that are fighting right now. With that, I think the Senator and I will take any questions. As I said, we have outlined, and I think I provided to everybody, a list of things that we want to provide. And let me head something off here, because probably it'll be one of the questions. I believe my opponent has also has a news conference today about an endorsement from VFW. I congratulate on that. I'll just tell you that I want to distribute to all the veterans my plan, what I want to endorse, what I'll do for the veterans if I'm elected, and then hopefully 2 years from now, when I'm in Congress, I'll receive that same endorsement. Thank you.
Any questions from our friends in the press?
I have a question. On Sunday, you have the Change Express kickoff conference call. Could you just shed a little light on what the Change Express is entailing, the conference call on Sunday?
Well, certainly. We are going to take a few days of next week and visit all 18 of the counties in the district, reaching out to people, making that last trip around the district, letting people know our message, let them know what we're about. Let them ask questions. We've probably met a lot of them that we'll see, but we'll continue to make that pledge to travel the district. And yeah, we think it's time for a change. That's what the people of the 8th District are telling me. And so we've coined that phrase, and we'll be out making those last week reaching out to the voters of the 8th District.
Brad, in terms of your Veterans Bill of Rights, certainly you're aware of what health care costs these days. How would you fund your increases in doctors and your increases in Veterans Administration hospital inpatient facilities? Or, Senator, do you want to field that one?
We'll probably say the same thing.
Jay, I kind of outlined here, when it comes to the Patriot penalty, I think we need to do the same thing for health care for veterans. What we've had going on in Washington, the amount of pork barrel spending every year over the last 6 years has increased now by $20 billion a year. I mean, just think about this. A bridge to nowhere, $231 million. That could almost pay to eliminate the entire Patriot penalty over the next 5 years. So we've got to get our priorities in place. Health care for veterans has to be a higher priority than pork barrel spending. Unfortunately, it's not that way in Washington today. That's why we need a change.
And I just echo that. I hear it every day, the things that are going on. I read an article just the other day where the government contracts are still being awarded to companies that do not pay their taxes. That wouldn't happen, I don't believe, in Vandenberg County. I don't think the federal government should award contracts. And if it's my understanding, and I hate to use the percent, but it was somewhere in the area of 25% of our national debt. If those companies would pay their taxes, we could reduce the debt by that much. I heard on the radio yesterday, contractors going to Iraq, sitting on their duffs, being paid by our government with our tax dollars, being paid, and have not done one stitch of work in Iraq, and yet they've been there 9 months being paid. These are the kind of things when you're a fiscal conservative, when you have your priorities right, that you go in and you start digging. When we start talking about money, millions of dollars being lost, in bales of $100 bills being shipped to Iraq and then being lost or stolen with no accounting. There is money, a lot of money comes into this country that you and I pay as taxpayers, and a lot of it gets flushed. I'd rather spend my dollars, my tax dollars, on rewarding these and thanking these people for the freedoms that they've provided me.